cameras off and stay muted till the end of the session. Kindly type your questions in the chat box and they will be answered in the Q&A section of the webinar. Now we request Mr. Naresh Pal Gangavar from Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change to say a few words to set the context of the meeting. Mr. Naresh Pal, over to you.
Good evening, everybody. As I could see from the basic overall agenda of this webinar, that how do we improve productivity and competitiveness of our industry in order to achieve goals of Atmanirbhar Bharat. As you are aware that the ministry is responsible for granting environment clearances for the establishment of various enterprises and industry, and also we act as a regulator. We prescribe standards for emissions and effluent discharge of effluent, and also we regulate when the industry is running. So in that context, I think we would like to hear from the participants that what is their expectation from the Environment Ministry and what are the things which bothers them while they operate on the ground, and what can be done and what should be the efforts made by the industry, by the department, by the ministry for improving the productivity and the competitiveness of our industry. And from ministry, that's it. Can we start the conversation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Naresh Pal Gangavar ji, for these enlightening regards. Now, I would request Ms. Rita Roy Chaudhary, the Assistant Secretary General from FICCI, to take on as the moderator of the session.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Okay. Thank you. So, firstly, I'm really happy to be moderating this session, and it's indeed a subject very close to my heart. And so I'd like to thank the Department of Commerce for organizing this webinar and for giving us an opportunity to be part of this interesting discussion. We have a very interesting panel of speakers here today. And since this is on environmental services, the speakers will cover a vast spectrum of the environmental services market, so to say. Now, we know that environmental services, there are essentially, I see it as falling into two brackets. One is the service between private to private, which is from the environmental service provider directly to industry or a corporate. And the other kind of environmental services which fall in the realm of PPP model, which are particularly in terms of the private sector participation in environmental infrastructure and technology services provided under government tendered contracts. So these essentially fall in the realm of public service delivery related areas. So, it could be water, it could be sanitation, any number of things. And as Mr. Gangwar also pointed out, that it is regulations play a very, very important role in driving the demand for environmental services, particularly in our country, where most of the demand comes from the compliance perspective. And due to the plethora of environmental regulations that industry is required to abide by. There is also a strong push that comes from the policy and program side, where, due to the various missions or programs of the government, that also tends to trigger the demand for environmental services. So, for example, the Swachh Bharat mission, the Jal Jeevan mission, the National Solar Mission, and there are many, many other missions, which are large government programs where environmental services, again, play a very, very important role. And last but not the least, is the supply chain pressure that is there from large companies who have essentially embraced sustainability voluntarily because they see sustainability as intrinsic to remaining competitive in the future, and something that will ensure their business continuity. So they tend to put that pressure, that kind of pressure comes cascading down to their supply chain, and that also generates the need for environmental services. And one of the things I think paramount in today's discussion would be quality and productivity. These are the two important aspects when we talk about environmental services. And because they are really, important for the environmental services market to remain competitive domestically as well as in the global markets. And so we will talk about the key constituents of this, and I'm sure the different speakers will highlight their perspectives on quality, on productivity, and what they see in terms of enhancing the environmental services market in India, what challenges they're facing today, and what they would like to see in terms of enhancing the export competitiveness of the environment. So, we'll now begin the discussion, and I'll request everyone to please keep themselves on mute. We can hear some sounds. So, requesting all speakers to keep themselves on mute. And I will request each speaker to please stay within. I will request the speakers to stay within their time limit, which has been allotted. So we will actually start by one speaker at a time, and I will invite first Shri Rajkumar Gupta, who is the director and CEO of Toshiba Water Solutions Private Limited. Mr. Gupta and his company is in the field of water waste and wastewater treatment and related projects. So, Mr. Gupta, we'd like to hear from you about how standards play an important role as far as environmental services, and maybe particular to the kind of services that your company offers, and what can be done to enhance quality and accreditation process, etc. for this segment, and any other key observations that you would like to make. So over to you, Mr. Gupta. You have to unmute yourself, Mr. Gupta.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Chaudhary, and very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will briefly introduce myself again. My name is R.K. Gupta, and I am whole-time director and CEO of Toshiba Water Solutions Private Limited. Our company provides, water and wastewater services within India and globally as well. We are located in 5 countries outside India. So we provide environmental related services more specific to water within India and outside India also. And I'd like to cover these subjects, in a way I deem appropriate to enhance the quality and productivity of environmental services, the way I see it. Apart from this, I am also on the Central Governing Council of Services Export Promotion Council, that is SCPC, and I am heading the Environment Service Division there. Environment services are in great focus not only in India, globally also. Rapid urbanization, growing industrialization is putting a lot of pressure on environment, and there is a ever-growing need of environmental services, and that brings that customers are looking for high-quality services from various companies and service providers like us. The global market of water, if I talk about water and wastewater, this is more than $60 billion, and this is growing at a CAGR of about 3 to 4% annually. Looking at the budget that Indian government presented yesterday, the finance minister presented yesterday, there was a greater focus on environmental services, and from the outlay that the government presented, there was a fairly decent amount which has been allocated on water and sanitation services, and then air pollution also, and so that underlines the importance of environmental services. In order to understand the issue, I will come to codes and other things, in order to understand the spectrum of services that can happen, So broadly, in our business, I would say, the services can be offered by way of consulting. Consulting would mean pure consulting and engineering services. Then there is construction-related services, which are, building a sewage treatment plant or air pollution unit or whatever. And then, there is another services which are growing in a very rapid manner. These are operation and maintenance services, So the spectrum of services is fairly big. Now, coming back to the point which Ms. Chaudhary raised, that is on the importance of codes. Now, this is where, while in India we are able to, live with the codes, essentially BIS or IS codes, and largely not a very big problem. But the moment when we offer, services outside India, this becomes a sort of a bottleneck. While there is a greater acceptability of codes like British standard or American standards, Japanese standards, or let's say DIN, which are German standards, the acceptability of Indian standards is very low, and we are, made to wonder, whether we study those codes and how do we comply with those codes. So my request or my expectation is that, we improve the standard, or we create an awareness of the standard that we have. And I think here BIS needs to support us by bringing codes which have a direct equivalence to the codes which are internationally accepted, or there is a greater acceptance of our codes by other countries. For example, if you go in Middle East, the acceptance of Indian standards is extremely low, whereas they are quite happy to follow British standards. Let me take another example. On the safety side also, I will cover this subject a little later. So, so the request is that the Indian standards, we should either create a repository that wherein we can say that Indian standard has an equivalence to so and so standard, which we normally do, but then this should have a very transparent acceptability across the board. So this will help not the industry within India, but outside India also, So this is one thing. Second thing is that, when we talk about services are essentially provided by the manpower. Now, acceptability of that manpower, when I say manpower, I talk essentially about the skills that those manpower would have, Now, likewise, when we try to send our people outside India, there is the accreditation of their skills is missing. So they have to re-qualify themselves in the country that they go, But likewise, in case they have some accreditation, let's talk about safety, which I just tried to mention earlier. We have very well trained safety engineers in India, but when they go outside India, people will normally ask something like NEBOSH, So NEBOSH is a good standard, but why don't we have standard which is equivalent to NEBOSH, so that people are trained according to that, and then they have a greater acceptability in the global market. Likewise, cable jointers, welders, fitters, scaffolders. I mean, these are big skills, which we send to the countries where we execute our projects, for construction services or, later operation and maintenance services, So if there is some program here in India where we provide them some kind of training which is duly accredited or recognized by other countries, this will be greatly helpful to the industry as a whole. Then Another thing, is that when we send manpower outside India, I'm sorry, I'm covering most of the services related to on an export front. So no, the visa becomes a very major bottleneck here. I would request the various ministries to help the companies to see that visas are given in a manner which is time bound and productive. The reason here is that in other countries, when we hire their labor, the skill set is not matching to our requirements, and it is expensive also. So that will become us more productive and more efficient, more cost efficient, I would say. Then when we are training the people, I think there should be some more training on the softer side. Apart from the language skills, people should also be trained on local customs, culture, and etiquettes, which will also help in a very big way. So I think these are the few issues that I thought I will cover, which will help industries to deliver their services in a more productive manner, and which will also help us in improving the quality of our services. That is all from me for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent points. You've raised some very, very pertinent issues, and I'm sure these will be considered by the Department of Commerce. And I will speak about this when I wrap it up, but excellent points. I'd now like to invite Mr. S.K. Gupta. Mr. Gupta is the founder director of Envirotech Instruments Private Limited, which essentially provides air pollution monitoring instruments. So, Mr. Gupta, we'd like to hear from you your initial observations, and particularly if you can touch upon again, the need for certification and training. I know Mr. R.K. Gupta has already touched upon certain points. If you have some additional points to supplement what he has said, that would be great. So, over to you, Mr. S.K. Gupta.
Thank you, madam. First of all, I would like to thank QCI for inviting me to speak on this August forum. And my brief introduction has been given by you. I set up this company, Envirotech Instruments, in 1982, soon after the Air Pollution Act was passed by the Indian Parliament. And at that time, there was a requirement in the Act that every industrial unit will have to monitor their emissions and keep them under limit. So there was a need for instruments, indigenous instruments in the country. And we took upon ourselves this challenge that let's develop indigenous technology and instrumentation for monitoring air pollution and air quality in India. So with that sole objective, we founded this company, and we are still continuing that work even after 40 years of that work. And we have been largely successful in achieving our objective that the entire data on air quality today has been generated through instruments produced by our company. That's my brief introduction. I'm also the honorary secretary of an association called Indian Association for Air Pollution Control, of which I am the secretary. And we have a body of about 700-800 scientists and engineers working in the field of air pollution and air quality. Now, when I was asked to speak on this environmental services sector, and especially on the training and certification part, two things came to my mind. That environmental services, let's understand once again what Ms. Chaudhary has already explained and Gupta Sahab has already explained. What are environmental services? Actually, environment is so deeply integral to all aspects of our ecosystem that any service related to maintaining a balance between this environment and ecosystem can be classified into this category. And broadly speaking, I see environmental services in four categories. One is monitoring and assessment of environmental status. Second category would be, in my opinion, would be pollution control and mitigation. Third would be environmental management. And fourth will be any related service like engineering, consulting, waste to energy, R&D, education, training, life cycle assessment, green building certification, green labeling, etc., etc. So if we can broadly, I think we can broadly put all the environmental services into these 4 kind of categories. Now, the question which you have asked from me regarding the certification and training, I feel training is a very, very important aspect, and it's the most challenging part in these environmental services, because unless and until the service provider is competent and is able to deliver what is expected of him, the quality will not improve. The quality of environment will not improve. And if the quality of environment does not improve, then I think the efficiency will not improve and the productivity will not improve. So I think that training is a very, very crucial part for any environmental services provider. And unfortunately, the scenario in the country today is that no education institute in our country provide this kind of training. They all provide classroom, lecture room trainings, and no hands-on training is given to the service, to the graduating students. And unfortunately, no programs are also in place where such kind of hands-on training or on-site training can be imparted to people so that they can get trained on this providing environmental services. We had started some training programs in 1985-86, and our objective of those training programs were, they were 3 to 4 days training programs, and we wanted that people should get hands-on training or use of equipment, devices, operation and maintenance, and things like that. So we have trained almost 1,200 people in the country in last 35-40 years, and all of them are very nicely placed in various pollution control boards, industries, and several places, and providing good services. But I think this is very crucial that we have to develop these training programs in the country, and I will like to quote one very great example how this training can be imparted. I think the best training can be provided at these on-site locations, at the facilities where the equipment and facilities are available. For example, I'll give you a small example just to illustrate my point, that if I want to train somebody on monitoring industrial emissions, how do I train him? Can I train him in the classroom? Can I train him in a seminar or a web seminar or conference? No. I'll have to take that person to an industrial location where he will be asked to work at least for a week, 15 days or a month, along with the personnel of the facility owner, and how emissions are monitored. He has to collect a sample from the chimneys, emitting chimneys. He has to collect a sample with a proper instrument, with a calibrated instrument. So this means he has to understand the device which he is using, and he has to see whether that instrument is calibrated or not calibrated. If not calibrated, then he must know how to calibrate the equipment at site. So these kind of learnings he will only get when he's at the site. Similarly, if he's a chemist, if he has taken a sample, then he has to analyze that sample to find out the concentration of the various pollutants which he has collected from the chimney. And this means he must understand the analytical equipment. He must know how to use an analytical equipment. So again, once again, he requires on-site training on them. Suppose he has collected the sample, he has collected and analyzed the sample, then he has to understand how to interpret that result, whether that value which he has observed or calculated is what kind of relevance it has. Is it high, is it low, or is it within the compliance, or what were the conditions of the process industry at that time, what kind of situations he had collected that sample. So he has to understand all those things and understand the way how he has to record and report this data to his management. And management only then will understand, yes, these are the kind of problems are there in my industry, and with that report from that service provider, he would be able to take corrective actions within his plant so that the quality of environment will improve and the quality of his production will improve. So two things, both the things will happen. If this happens, if this small effort at this lowest level person happens, I think the quality and productivity both will enhance greatly. And another, this was one example of a stack emission monitoring device, but similar things can be done for the waste management or pollution. Beg your pardon? Or management of air pollution control devices or ETPs or STPs. Same guidelines are to be sort of adopted by that service provider in these kind of facilities also. I think we have to really change the way we have been training our people in the country. We have to build a sort of a kind of a program where hands-on training is imparted to the people so that the objective of quality and productivity both are achieved. Regarding the certification which you mentioned, I think it is important that it should be given to people. But I think before the certificate is awarded to that person or it is given to that man, a rigorous training and his testing of his competence is done thoroughly. Because what happens otherwise, people. So what happens that
the organizers IT team to mute others, please?
So I think this certification is important, but it requires a very rigorous training and testing and examination of that person regarding his competence. Otherwise, he will just get a certificate, will do a shoddy job at the wherever he's providing a service, and the fulfillment of our objective of environmental protection will not be achieved. I think we have a lot of CSIR labs, IITs, and many manufacturing companies who can take up this kind of responsibilities. Some organizations are also there, like Indian Association of Air Pollution Control, which I mentioned. They can also take up these kind of responsibilities and train people and issue certificates, which government should mandate that any service provider must have staff which have this kind of certificates with them. Only then the quality and productivity objective will be achieved. And I think every 2 years, such persons should again undergo a retest of their abilities so that they are able to deliver what is expected of them. I think I will end here, and I think I have answered some of your questions and supplemented to what Mr. R.K. Gupta said. Thank you very much.
Mr. S.K. Gupta, very important points again that you have highlighted, and the emphasis on on-site training, which is absolutely critical, and that it's important that certification also gets mandated. Now, just before I move on to the next speaker, just a little correction from my end. I mentioned in the beginning Department of Commerce. This webinar is being organized by DPIIT and supported by QCI. So just a correction in that regard. I'll now like to invite Mr. Basavant Magadum, who's the Reliability Manager of TUV Rhineland India Private Limited. And as we know, the TUV Rhineland provides environmental audit services primarily. So, Mr. Magadum, we'd like you to, provide your perspectives on the kind of environmental tests that are required. What is the impact of all this on products, certification tests that can be done, and any other observation that you would like to add in addition to what the previous panelists have already said. So over to you, Mr. Magadum.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. As Madam introduced, my name is Baswant Magadum. I am responsible for all the environmental services provided by the TUV Rhineland. So we are into the service provider for the testing, certification, qualification of the product, inspection, and training academy. So as we are discussing about in this session, first of all, thank you for the part of this session. So as we are discussing about the in this session about the quality and productivity. So before going for this quality and productivity, we need to understand what is the environmental services. So just briefly I go to the services. What are the environmental services covered over here? So then in two stages, I'll go for the quality and productivity. So first of all, the environmental. What is environmental? So first is environmental is nothing but which is collectively called as the environmental surrounding us. And fine, but what is the environmental services over here? So environmental services is nothing but simulation of different environmental conditions for its real end use or as per its end application intended use. So then, whom these environmental services required? Whom is actually useful? These are mainly useful for all the manufacturers, all the OEMs, R&D sectors, design house, and all these need to know the entire development cycle of the product, different environmental conditions as per the market specification or as per the intended use to have a confidence on their product. But what is the impact? What is the environmental impacting on the product? So that also we need to understand. So first of all, the environmental impacts on the products, it develops the stress on the products, could be chance of physical damages, malfunctions due to change in extreme climatic conditions. Maybe the product may fail also, and maybe hazardous to the environmental on the entire product or the entire product assembly and the user as well. Okay, so if want to have the quality, then we must need to go for this environmental service strategy. So if the product is not undergone for these services, then there could be too much of risk involved with releasing the untested or not qualified product to the market for its intended use. The product may fail by developing the huge stress developed by the climatic conditions, and due to this, there could be increase in huge customer complaints, and by increasing the customer complaints, definitely the productivity also get decreases, and obviously the OEM will be out of the competitive market. Okay, fine. Then fine. How to improve the quality of the product then? So most of the times what will happen is most of the time the product fails during the transportation conditions, operations, or during the storage conditions. Hence, the failure mode has to be analyzed and should be taken care during its design and development stage only. So better strategies are required, preferably environmental testing strategies that can be reliable, sufficiently accelerated the intended use, wear and tear, and aging of the products. In this stage, the engineering team is supposed to predict case by case study how the given product need to be designed and how to work on the careful planning and testing strategies to have a safer reliability product to the market. It looks like all the generic categories and methods simulating environmental testing. These simulated environmental allowed to produce anticipated types of stress on the product. The environmental test may be performed at various stages to rectify potential defects from the prototype to the final production of the products as per the manufacturer's or user's requirements. So these are the quality requirements. Then how to increase the productivity then? So by implementing the environmental stress strategies would enable us or any company to reduce the product development time at the same time and reduce the product development cost as well. Environmental test or environmental simulation will help us to accelerate the aging process of the product to predict its life cycle and analyze the mode of failures. Okay, then what is the benefit of all these environmental services? Then definitely the manufacturers, OEMs, that will help them to bring their products safer, smarter product to the market. And the risk will be negligible during the production cycle, increases the productivity over here if you have the proper strategy in the reliability services, and there will be no product recalls, no replacement of the users, and negligible warranty. So once we have the warranty period, then the claims will be negligible for the entire product life cycle, and there will not be any litigation issues as well. Okay, fine, but how to simulate these conditions? So actually there are some environmental simulation test equipments are available in the market in which we can create the same environmental conditions as per the intended use. Maybe with example, extreme cold and high temperatures, rapid change in temperatures, difference in ambient altitude conditions, let's say vibrations, we can simulate the transportation conditions, and similarly many more are there. So as Gupta sir, R.K. Gupta sir and H.K. Gupta sir is telling that there is no standards and how to sell the products abroad, and yeah, and they will be facing some issues after sales at the abroad. So if the product is qualified as per the IEC, for example, IEC, ISO or BIL or ISA standards at the development stage or before selling to the market, then these kind of issues will not be there after post sales. And also there are many OEMs, they have their own standards or qualification test plans as per their product category. We can, as a TU Reliant, we can perform the test and do the qualification records. So there are different kinds of environmental simulations out there. So what are those? There are temperature simulations, humidity simulations, difference in altitude, HALT, HAZ test, corrosion test, ingression production test, the mainly the product which are will be installed in the outdoor applications. It's better to have ingression production test for the product, UV test, ozone test, and similarly the mechanical test, which covers the vibration, mechanical shock, impact test, rough handling. By this we can, this is very much a good example for the transportation conditions. And also there's one more test called the combined environmental and vibration test. Yeah, so these are all the environmental tests as a TU Reliant we can support for the testing, certification, training. Yeah, we have a one-stop solution for all the services we as a TU Reliant we can provide. And TU Reliant is accredited for all these environmental services as per the 17.25. Yeah, that's it from my side.
Thank you, Mr. Magadum. I think that's a vast range of environmental tests and services that you spoke about. And I'd like to hear later on when we come back in the discussion, which ones have good potential also, if that's something that you can later highlight. Okay, now we'll go on to our next speaker, Mr. Sandeep Chatterjee, who's the Director in Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, METI. And he's a techno administrator who's engaged in implementing R&D projects and technology development on electronics material and photonics and their components, and processing technology as well. So, Mr. Chatterjee, over to you. And two key things that we'd like to hear from you. I think the previous speakers have spoken about the need for skilling, training, etc., and what kind of service areas are there. The broad spectrum of services. So where do you see industry academia linkages in this sector? I think that's very important. It's not just important to skill people, but it's also important to see where the demand for those skills will come from. So the industry academia linkages is something very important, and if you could highlight your perspectives on that. And the second thing is, which are the new technological or innovation areas that you think might be important for industry to embrace? So over to you, Mr. Chatterjee. Mr. Chatterjee, you have to unmute yourself.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Shudri. Can I show my slides? Possible?
No, please go ahead.
Yes. It is visible?
Yes, it is.
Thank you for giving me a chance. As you all know, I'll be discussing on electronic waste recycling. Our ministry is actually engaged in creating low-cost technology, low-cost process technology, machines, as well as creating a skill set and awareness program in the country. Of course, our sister ministry, Ministry of Environment and Forest, are engaged in policy and framework and rules, as you know. So if we actually address this huge problem, the electronic waste generation, actually we have to see the from design part of the electronics to the end of life. So entire ecosystem should be understood so that we can address this problem. So one snapshot of generation of electronic waste in 2020, one international report says that India has reached the third place from fifth place in 3 years, and we have already generated 3.23 million metric ton of electronic waste out of the 54 million metric ton globally produced. And if you see the material part of it, that entire 3.23 million metric ton, we have almost 1.6 million metric ton of ferrous metals inside it, and we have a 0.6 million metric tons of non-ferrous metal, and 0.6 million metric ton of seven different categories of plastics, and of course there are hazardous material. So if you can see the industrial scale, if you some industrial technology or low cost affordable technology can be given, so this could be a very good economic activity. Of course, the standards and other things required to be done. So if you see one snapshot of circular economy, we should discuss the circular economy. From the design point of view, we are actually engaged in a linear economy. We are making the product and just throwing it away. So there are in between states recycling economy where some of the products are end of life products are getting recycled. But we should think about the circular economy from the design point of view. When the process are being set up, how much is the wastage during the process, and how you are designing so that refurbishment is possible, and how you are getting the final recycling, what should be the resource efficiency so that maximum material can be recovered and used into the product development. So in that aspects, if you see the rule of the country of EWaste Rule 2016, only 21 products are mentioned in Schedule 1. Whereas European Union is using 642 products. But in India, we are using majority of the products. So the material used in those products are not being, monitored properly where they are going, and they are not ambit of the rule at present. Another challenging thing is the mass balancing. If there are 407 recyclers and there are many PROs, if the materials are coming, products are coming, what is the amount of plastics inside it? What should be the metals, rare earth and other material, and how they are transported from one hand to the other hand, we are not aware. So that is why the leakages are going on. And if you talk about the 407 authorized recycler, their capability, their capacity, their technical capabilities are not being audited properly. and PRO, dismantler, recyclers, quality standards are missing. It is all voluntary. People are maybe taking, not taking, so all are registered in one platform. Process audit is also missing, so that to set a benchmark or honoring who are having a better quality, so that is also missing. And other three part already Ms. Roy Choudhury has mentioned: citizen awareness, skill manpower in the system, affordable infrastructure, machine, equipment, and affordable process team. These three bullet, our ministry has done some substantial work. So of course another part is ROHS compliance. The product, there are 6 categories of hazardous material has been identified. So the only testing lab and certification lab is we have created in CMAT Hyderabad. That is the only government lab available. So if you see the electronic waste technology, basically we are engaged in dismantling manually till the printed circuit board. Printed circuit board is the most precious part of the any electrical and electronics product, where the boards are also different types of boards are used. For a mobile board is the costliest. So if you are talking about electrical board, is a low value board. And we have tried all the available technology globally. Like in NML Jamshedpur, we have tried the physical method for pulverizing the board and segregating the metals, concentrating metal and hydrometallurgy. And in another technology which actually Umicore Belgium is doing, that is smelting, that we tried with our own lab, CMAT Hyderabad and E-Parisara. And after that we upscale it. So we have a printed circuit board, first time in the country. Available in CMAT Hyderabad, we have a 100 kg printed circuit board processing. That means 3.5 metric ton of electronic waste, batch process. And another is 1000 printed circuit board process, that is 35 metric ton of electronic waste per day. That is with our industry partner in E-Parisara. And in plastics, there are 27% of plastics are available, and we have 7 different categories of plastics. So 76% of the plastics we have converted to the master batch, and those master batch used for car bumper, steering, interior of the car. So these all the 100 kg technology of the printed circuit board and this plastic technology already handed over to the technology has been transferred in commercialized. We think that in electronic waste there are many other things as well. Like you are talking about hard disk, we have a spent magnet, we have a CFL and fluorescence lamp, we have a phosphor where we have a rare earth material. So they also much precious than even gold. So we should have a technology, low cost technology for extracting the rare earth metals. So we created a center of excellence in CMAT, around CMAT Hyderabad, with a participatory funding mode. Telangana government has given 40%, METI has given 40%, and 20% are industry contribution. And we have engaged with other academic institutes like IIT Hyderabad, CPET Bhubaneswar, and internationally National Institute of Environmental Studies, Japan. So here our main goal should be, we will be creating 50 SMEs, 12 startup companies in recycling, and we will be hand-holding the informal sectors. Of course, ROS practice will be training the 100 SMEs, and of course we will be creating the high-skill manpower in MTech and PhD so that they can fit to our entrepreneurship of this business in the country. And this is the offering from the Center of Excellence. So we have already having a printed circuit board. So we are upgrading that technology in CMAT with a 300 kg. So we are having the 4 metals getting. Basically, it is a pulverizing. Then we are going for a pyrolysis, then smelting and electrolysis. And in this technology, we are collecting gold, silver, palladium, and copper. And another technology is basically lithium-ion battery. There are 2 technologies. One is hydrometallurgical route, another is pyrometallurgical route. Both are having patent. PCB is also we have patented. This is the technology for hard disk, that is spent permanent magnet. This is also offering. We have created the IP. And this is your CFL and fluorescence. This is the low value item in electronic waste. this machine we have developed that could be suitable for the municipality, because nobody is interested to take the CFL and fluorescence. So this is also another technology. We have a huge rare earth material, yttrium, terbium, cerium, so high value metals. So this can be linked to the Indian rare earth organization, so that our rare earth availability in the country can be ensured. Now last one, which is not part of our schedule 1, that is solar panel, because whatever the photovoltaic panels you are purchasing, their end of life is not 20 years, it is just going after 8 years or 10 years is going in the wasting. So we thought that we should have a good technology to extract the value metals, and the glass can be extracted from it. So that is also another part. So how this Center of Excellence created in 2019 and getting a success, this is a one snapshot. For printed circuit board, already we have handed over to NAMO EWaste, and there are 6 more industry are interested to have a technology rollout. And in lithium ion battery also recycling, 7 companies are engaging with us for technology handholding. And first time in the country, or rather globally, first time MTech course on EWaste Recycling and Engineering Management has been created in IIT Hyderabad, and where we are also taking some of the course modules. CMAT Hyderabad is also taking some of the course module. And we are giving a PCB recycling training to all the informal sectors, and also who are taking a technology from us. Apart from there, ROS training for the SMEs also going on under the Center of Excellence. This is another thing. Any product you are developing, you require to see that hazardous materials are not there. As we all know, there are 6 items has been identified: lead, cadmium, mercury, hexavalent chromium, and 2 special categories of plastics. So with a certain ppm level, like lead is used for soldering, so now it has been replaced with the tin. Similarly, the design is the most important thing. Unless we are changing the design, the waste material, hazardous material to the waste stream cannot be minimized. So this is the CMAT Hyderabad is the only government lab has been identified by the CPCB as a reference lab from 2007, because rule has been enacted from 12, but this lab is operational from 2007. Now, as you know, in Europe, we have a 10 item. Phallards are also there. In our country, still not there, but who are sending exporting the products to outside the country, they require phallards test as well. So I'm just so these are the country where ROS directives are there, including our country, and these are all state-of-art equipments we are having for different type of testing, chromium, mercury, lead, and as you know, the product is a specific for getting a analytical test. You require to have a proper sample preparation. So that for sample preparation, there are lots of sample preparation equipment is also available in the lab. So this is the on ROHS. Apart from that, to channelize the material to the formal recycler, you require a massive awareness program. So as per the Honorable Prime Minister's call, we have initiated this program in 2015. For 5 years, we have done this awareness program, and we have touched base 31 states, and we have a dedicated website, greeny.gov.in, where all the contents we develop from international agency are available. Anybody can download that content and do the awareness program in a sustainable basis. Apart from that, Ministry of Education has taken our content 7 to 9 standard students, and they are rolling out in Diksha platform. And these are some of the achievement, and I'll be showing some number. Is through cinema we have touched base 21 crores Indian in 31 states. In classroom type, 17 lakhs participation was there, and these are some of the photographs on that. And this is my last slide. From 2 years, we are now starting to create a skill set in the country. There are almost 30 lakhs informals are engaged, without having a adequate training on safety. What are the tools are required? So we started it through Northeast, 8 Northeast states. We have started through our one NILET Gantok Center, where 30 candidates from nominated by State Pollution Control Board will be trained, and we will be creating almost 30 trained manpower, trainers in this scheme, so that in sustainable model they can further train other candidate. So this is one of the scheme we are starting, and this financial year we will be starting the similar program in Punjab University. So we'll be interested to create some infrastructure within that engineering college, so that this type of training can be sustained in the thing. So whatever we are doing, we are thinking a sustainable model. Center of Excellence is having a sustainable model, so that the government should not pay continuously. This skill program is also having a sustainable model, and also the awareness program we have created a sustainable model. That is all from my side.
Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee, and thank you for this very exhaustive presentation and for a very, very niche area, which is e-waste management. And I'm so glad that you touched upon not just end of life or end of the pipe, but you spoke about from the design stage to the end of life, and to look at a circular approach. So that's very, a very, very interesting insight. And so many things that METI has come forward with. It's very interesting, from training to technology to hand-holding and, skilling, the entire gamut. And here we have a government, a ministry really taking the lead. So that's a very, very interesting thing to see. Thank you very much. Now, we'll move on to our next speaker, who I think is, if I'm not mistaken, is joining us from Japan on this webinar, Mr. Hiroshi Tachikawa, who's the Managing Director of ProFarm Japan Company Limited, specializing in EHS, environmental health and safety, and sustainability-related business consulting. So, Mr. Tachikawa, welcome to this webinar, and we'd be delighted to hear what are the global best practices, particularly from Japan in the environmental services sector, which you think might be, applicable in the Indian market. So over to you, Mr. Tachikawa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chaudhary, about the your kind introductions, and it is very nice to meet you all. Even though I think that some of the people are not on the video. Yes, I'm actually joining in this session from Tokyo, Japan, and unfortunately, it's been almost a year since the last time I flew to the India, and India is one of my favorite actually the countries, and so I hope we can actually see each other face to face very soon. But I hope everyone can get over this difficult time. Okay, so I would like to actually show my screens if it's okay for you.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, is this something that you can see now?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. Okay, so I would like to just briefly share with you about some of the approaches that we actually take from the in terms of the Japan's experience. And again, about my background, excuse me. I'm actually engaged in the EHS, the environmental health and safety, the consultings, based on the global networks. And we actually support a number of companies in Japan, of course, but those companies, who have some activities in India as well. And also, we do conduct intensive activities in relation to the resource efficiencies and efficiency work for the in terms of the resource efficiency as well as the carbon efficiency. So today, I would like to quickly share about our experience from Japan. So first, I think there are lots of activities around the environment when it comes to the environmental monitorings, EHS management, these type of activities. And I think the base behind these type of the number of series of the activities, I think we need some sort of key concept that I think that we need to share, and which is actually one of the concepts that we start having, and I think it's been more now the 10 years or so, is the sort of a sustainability related concept. And what this is the basically the focus in terms of the business activities. And when we mention about the business, is the of course those industrial manufacturing activities, but at the same time our own such as environmental service activities as well. So what we need to see now is the of course in terms of the business per se activities, we need to be very active in focusing on profit, and at the same time we try to improve our productivities. But nowadays why there's so much pressures in terms of the environment is related to the external impacts, which is related to the some pressures from the some supply chains, the client, or some sort of standards as well. So now we need to look at our own single activities from these two different angles, and then we really need to achieve the business as well as the environmental or social the sustainabilities. So when we talk about the at least sort of in terms of our in general the service providing activities when it comes to the environment, we always kind of have two things in mind, which is one is actually internal target, which is related to our own internal organization's activities. But at the same time, again, we need to now be aware of what type of impacts we really have to the external the environment. So currently, in our understanding is there is a huge in terms of the movement from the existing just general business practice to the sort of a sustainability, or more investor related ESG type of activities as well. But the always what we kind of strongly feel, and also we do recommend to our client as a environmental service provider is so how you can actually take a leap or take a huge jump from the existing business practice to the future or the sustainable business target. And that's not really the easy the questions that we can answer immediately. So based on our existing activities, how we can change our paradigm in the long run. But at the same time, we need to discuss about what we are going to do tomorrow. So there needs to be some balance in terms of those concepts. And one of the way that we deal with is the what we call some accountability based approaches in relation to the sustainabilities. So today is my very brief. The presentation is related to the concept of accountabilities. So it's a very broad terms. However, nowadays it's quite important for any type of services. For the certifications, of course, that there has to be some accountability why, some organization needs to be certified. And also for those, in terms of any type of environmental activities, environmental management, environmental monitorings, there has to be some values that's been given to the customers in relation to some standards, regulations, requirements. But for the general business practice, their motivation is, as I indicated to you, increasing profit is a mandate, and the external target is actually the one that now they need to be aware of. So what we focus in terms of the first, industrial productivity is, we try to make these industrial activities, more, productivity, productivity enhanced objectives. So meaning that, in terms of the resource use, which happens to be related to the environment, but at the same time, this actually takes the economic values as well. So we try to focus this aspect, especially in Japan, in terms of the productivity enhancement. We focus here as a key core target when discussing about the environmental management, as well as the enhancement of the productivities. So as you know, we have a lot of the what we call like a productivity enhancement approaches. But now we first focus here, and then just try to eliminate in terms of the what we call like the negative impact products for your business as well as the environment. So so now, believe it or not, when we discuss about the environment, now we are talking about the business figures, but which is quite important understandings, because obviously when we discuss about, for example, here's some numbers, which is the sales figures, which is in under the conventional way of the business management. And then here, what you see on the right hand side is the what we call like resource efficiency based profit and loss understandings. And of course, we need to skip here for our full explanations. But what this is this cost here is actually negatively working for your businesses as well as for the business, for the environment as well. Because this is actually talking about the full actual accountability for your waste generations from your operational cost accounting process. So this type of calculation actually gives you lots of information, and that gives you the sort of business incentives as well as the environmental motivations to reduce or to be more resource efficient. So this type of accountability type of activities when it comes to resource efficiency is kind of a key concept now in Japan. So probably from the keyword, because right now we are having a concept that when it becomes the end of the pipes output, that is going to be too late. And of course, right now, we are talking about the circular economy concept, but our sort of mindset is there is a lot of things that we could do to reduce or to make things become the waste at the end of the pipe approach for the recycling or reuse or circular type of the activities. So this is what we call actually in-process approach. And so this in-process approach actually gives you sort of the new indications about your business performance as well as environmental performance. And actually, there are lots of things that's being achieved actually in India as well. And we take, I took the lead in various projects with this accountability type of calculations for the environmental as economic performances. And this is a very quick summary of what we did in terms of the productivity enhancement. And I understand that it's a very limited time, so please just let me go through very quickly about the number two accountability approaches. There is a Japanese project that's being actually going on is related to the actually energy use as well. So of course, renewable energy is very hot topic everywhere in Japan, and also of course in India we know that. And one of the concepts in relation to the accountability is we actually focus on the use of the renewable energies using the blockchain technologies. And by doing that, you can be very accountable for the energy emission use without having any type of third-party verifications. So this type of IoT or sort of the blockchain-based approaches to understand your actual energy use is the one of the approaches that has been discussed and also that has been implemented year by year right now. So this is just a very overview concept of the sort of the activities that's been there. So sorry, I know it's a very limited time, so I just give you as a very brief overview of the systems. But the key idea is really there is the electric generations, and there is the blockchain networks that's being connected with the different stakeholders, and then these the reduction impacts of the carbon emission has been calculated basically automatically within these blockchain systems, so that you don't need to have these some third-party certifications. But without that, the society or different stakeholders can be connected sort of organically to proceed to the sustainable or the decarbonizations the societies. So basically, in summary, I just give you very different two topics, but the key concept is very simple. Whenever we discuss about the environmental the services or environmental impacts, there has to be some accountable the explanations or the interpretation of what was the values. And in order to actually materialize or in order to characterize these values, there are a couple of IoT technologies that's been very active in Japan. And also, before those the huge technological approaches, there's things that actually with some mindset changes or some cost calculation approaches, you can have lots of ideas to see what type of environmental values you can create through the productivity enhancement. Okay, so I'm sorry, but this is a very brief explanations about our experience, and I hope you can find this as some interesting approaches. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tachikawa. Very, very interesting insights again, and you really brought a lot of focus on why accountability is important and how accountability can be measured. So thank you very much for that interesting presentation. We'll now move on to our last two speakers, and then we'll open the house. So our next speaker is Mr. Atul Kansal, who's the founder and managing director of Indus Enviro, specializing in environmental and social audits for financial institutions, particularly focusing on the environmental risks and liabilities management for infrastructure projects. So very, very interesting area, and again, a very new perspective that I think Mr. Kansal is going to share with us. So we'd like to hear from you also, firstly, how, financial institutions are opening up to this idea, and also the best practices that your company has adopted for global markets, and how this can be replicated. So over to you, Mr. Kansal. You have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Rita ma'am, and very good evening. And it's a pleasure to be on the panel today amongst this august audience. And thanks for a very kind introduction where you have mentioned about our focus area, which I personally believe is very different and very unique for an Indian consulting company. And because this has remained largely an area of big four or other multinational consulting companies. And it is that aspect that I will like to discuss about today, that how we have established an Indian environmental health and safety consulting and auditing company, which is actually competing with the world's best companies in the field of environment who have their operations in the country, and how we have let us say won against that competition by building up our business from a scratch and training people on the way, and making quality and productivity as our main competitive edge vis-a-vis these international companies. And today we started actually this company in 2001, and most of the people who are on the panel today are actually my old friends. And we started this company in 2001, and the name itself indicates that we wanted to give the pride of being an Indian to everybody who works in our company and also to the clients who we work for. Today, we are working for about 600 US, European and Japanese multinational clients for their operations in the country. And we are also working with most of the top financial institutions for their investments in the country. And as you briefly introduced our operations, our focus is on environment, health and safety risk management from a liabilities perspective, which is actually a very international perspective of environmental services. And incidentally, I mean, in India, this thing did not grow that well. And we don't look at things from a risk perspective as such, but we are looking at it more from a compliance perspective. And therefore, most of the environmental consulting services companies that we have in the country are actually focusing on either doing environmental permitting work or focusing on doing environment impact assessment studies, etc. But very few companies are actually focusing on risk management approach in which environmental auditing becomes the basic thing to go ahead to start with. But that has been I would say mainly an area of multinational consulting companies domain. And I incidentally happen to be founder of most of the multinational consulting companies which are operating in the country, like ERM, AECOM, Arcadis, Antia, and number of others. And I had the opportunity of working in those companies and starting those companies, in fact, from scratch. And what I actually learned in those companies was that they were trying to bring in international practices to Indian soil and to multinational clients who were coming to India, and they were trying to sell those services at I would say very expensive rates. And that is what prompted me to start our own Indian company in 2001. And we are now about 20-year-old company. And that was, I'm actually trying to focus on the challenges that we are facing in Indian Indian environmental services industry, and what are the challenges we are facing and what is the way forward. And that is why I am talking about these. Because we had to obviously face a lot of challenges establishing ourselves within the same domain where multinational consulting companies were already working. And it was to basically make an Indian company which will have the same kind of world-class excellence and professionalism and ethics and technical excellence and as our main forte. And today I am really proud to say that we have been able to do that. And the road to this milestone has been very challenging. And as Mr. S.K. Gupta initially mentioned, that we have a number of courses, educational qualifications in our country, starting from BE, Bachelor of Engineers and Master of Engineers, and scientist and other qualifications. But none of them actually gives you skills which can really make you, let us say, employment friendly, and particularly this kind of a global insight, into environmental risk management was not provided in any courses in India. And we also, as Ms. Rita, you mentioned that compliance actually is the backbone of our environmental services sector. And unfortunately, there is not enough education on environmental laws in the country. Our people are trained on technical aspects of environment, but not as much on environmental law. And therefore, the enforcement of these things is very weak, which actually leads to a lot of gaps, when it comes to real development of environmental services sector. So coming back to, our company, we are a export-oriented organization. As I mentioned, we are working with about 600 international companies, and why they are choosing us actually vis-a-vis other international companies is, I think, because of the culture we have developed in our company, which is in one way it is very local culture, very Indian culture, where we operate like a family. And on the other hand, we are a very professional organization which has a very high level of quality delivery. And therefore, I think we are able to address the requirements of multinational clients in a very local as well as global way, and fully complying with our Prime Minister's mission of vocal for local, and which actually is, I think, kind of inherent in what we are trying to do, and in our this company. And we believe this particular field of consulting and auditing that we have started in the country, there are hardly any, I think, Indian companies in this field, and there is a big gap in this field which can be fulfilled, and we as a mission are working on that, and we are trying to create hundreds of professionals every year through our training programs, who can actually go around and work on other projects in India, and help other clients, and do very well in their professional careers, so that this message of doing good for the society is spread, and so that a message of Indianness is also spread, and it is also a message of that Indian companies can also deliver same level of quality as any multinational company also goes around. And so it is in that spirit actually we work with lot of passion, and we some of the challenges that we have noted. One is obviously that our educational system, as I mentioned, does not really make you skilled in these kind of environmental consulting or environmental auditing or environmental law related matters, which keeps you relatively weak, and therefore lot of hands-on training has to happen in a job, and which, for example, we do a lot of hands-on training of our team members, and it takes about 2 to 3 years before we put them on field. That is one part. Second part is that most of the international companies in India who are operating in India are looking for even laboratory support that they are looking for is kind of not available in India. And we are, for example, for our soil and groundwater investigation projects, for the level of detail in which these international companies need analysis, we have to export our samples to places like UK and Singapore and Hong Kong, and so those kind of reliable labs are not there in the country right now, and these international multinational companies are basically do a lot of these things for legal reasons, because otherwise they get into liabilities as per their own country laws, and if they end up buying a property which is contaminated or something, and therefore they end up being in liability, and that is why they are doing it, and therefore they need to comply with international protocols. And as a number of speakers today pointed out, that Indian standards are not accepted worldwide, and therefore that remains a major gap, and therefore we have to send our samples etc. to labs outside the country, and which is a drain of our foreign exchange also, and but at the same time I think it is important that we develop those services in the country. As far as future of these services is concerned, I think there is a great potential in India for developing these services further, and also, I mean, one of the reasons for that is most of the multinational companies who are operating, they are very expensive, and our Indian clients generally cannot afford them, and therefore it is important that Indian companies come in this field, and Indian professionals take this as a challenge, and develop multi similar kind of consulting companies operating all around India. India is a big country, so working if a company is working in Delhi, they cannot really serve all over the country, and therefore it is important that there are multiple companies available all around the country, providing same level of professionalism, quality, and technical excellence. And our country has a number of IITs and a number of other educational institutions where environmental engineering, environmental sciences is actually being taught. And it is important that these additional subjects of environmental law and environmental risk management, auditing, etc., are also added to the curriculum, so that people, when they come out, they have those skills and they can go around and serve the Indian society. And also, I mean, from a future perspective, we see that there is a very good potential for these kind of services because of our policies of our government of India, which is, let us say, Atmanirbhar Bharat, in which a lot of Indian companies are going to follow international norms, in terms of quality, in terms of their production, in terms of systems, and therefore they will also require very good environment, health and safety management systems in their companies, and therefore there will be a big market for that. Then we actually are having a lot of foreign direct investment in the country because of our India being a hot target from that perspective. And therefore, we expect that a lot of mergers and acquisitions will happen in the country, and because of which also a lot of auditing support and other consulting support services will be required. And I will again like to say that I really feel very pained to see that only multinational companies are available in the country and not Indian companies are available. And so this is a big void which we need to fill up. And then there are other programs like smart cities program of the country, in which a lot of infrastructure development is happening in an environmentally responsible manner, which again generates a lot of opportunities for the services sector. Waste management sector is becoming very, very important in the country because a lot of international players are now coming in this market because we are a big generator of waste because of our large population. But at the same time, recycling of waste and other implementation of other technologies is becoming really important for our country, so as to have sustainable living for everyone. And therefore, there is a big demand for those services as well. Also, we know that Indian corporates are now competing with international corporates, and many of our Indian corporates are now listed among the international large corporations, and therefore the concept of sustainability has come in a very big way in our Indian corporates, and there also a lot of additional requirement for services in the sustainability domain has come up, and a lot of these things start with the basic science of auditing, and then looking at gaps and then how to improve on them. And then a continual commitment to continual improvement. And now these are the things which we have been doing in India for some time, but largely they have been limited, I would say, to large corporations. But it is important that these things are accepted by even the small scale and medium scale industries, and so that this message goes around, and a large demand for these services is created. And you mentioned, actually, Rita, you had mentioned about how financial institutions are coming in this, and I would like to say that financial institutions who are investing in the country, either directly or through other private equity funds, they are acting in a very responsible manner, and environment, social and governance, ESG, has become an integral part of ESG reviews of whatever investments they are making, either in solar energy sector or in other investments. I mentioned solar energy because we have a big solar program. similarly for wind energy and for other because in these sectors lot of foreign investment is coming, and with all those investments are coming additional conditions where we are supposed to act responsibly to environmental impacts as well as to social impacts of our actions. And therefore, my personal experience with the financial institutions has been that they don't invest in any project unless they do a detailed analysis of these impacts and build in proper mitigation measures. And all those things are also therefore making environmental services sector a very attractive sector from a professional perspective, where a lot of professional success I think can be achieved. There is a big gap in it right now, but if we work in a dedicated manner and take care of some of these things that I have just mentioned, then I think we can not only serve companies in India, but also start exporting these services to other parts of the world, which our company is incidentally already doing. And there are some other companies which are run by my friends, and I know that they are also exporting their services outside the country. But this is happening in a very small way, and we are very actively working with the Services Export Promotion Council, where we are registered
Mr.
as
Kansal, sorry, request you to wrap up quickly, please. We are running out of time.
Right. I think I am already kind of done actually, and so I was just saying that we are working closely with the Services Export Promotion Council to really increase the standards of these services in the country, so that there is more export of these services outside actually, and we can create a name for our country.
Thank you, Mr. Kansal. And I think you're in a very, very important area of, providing these, the ESG services or ESG assessment and the risk mitigation services for financial institutions. It's a very specialized area, as you mentioned. And I think that going forward, there'll be more and more demand as, institutions are becoming more aware of the risk factors involved in various projects and the need for mitigating those risks. So it's a very, very critical area of service, I think, that your company is offering, and there's great potential in this area. So now to our last speaker, Mr. Manish Dabkara. Mr. Dabkara is the MD and CEO of Enking International, which works again in a very niche market involved in carbon neutrality and carbon offset projects. And as we know that now the carbon market is a very different scenario from what it was a decade ago when it was driven by compliance. Now it is more voluntary market. So we'd like Mr. Dabkara to some light on what kind of potential is there in this market. Mr. Dabkara. I think you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I have shared my screen just in the next 2-3 minutes. First, I wish to cover about the carbon markets and the international protocols, so that the audience can understand about the same. Because in India, after 2010-11 or maximum by 12, there is nothing much had been discussed about the carbon markets by the media or by the government or the private agencies. So our company name is Enking International, and we brand name is Enking International, while the company name is EK Energy Services Limited. We are one of the world's largest carbon offset developer, having 2,000 plus clients at 40 plus nations. We have market share of 90% in India, and globally it's 30%. These are a few of our clients. The services that we provide is related to GHG projects, greenhouse gas projects, registration, verification, and trading services. We help organizations to determine carbon footprint, providing sustainability reporting services, and implementing various international standards. So as everyone is aware about the climate change, and because of the climate change, the global warming is a problem which is that means which is a very critical problem across, that has been recognized by all the nations. And to reduce the emissions, there is a protocol called as Kyoto Protocol had been signed during 2005, having commitment period starting from 2008 to 12 as the commitment period 1, and the commitment period 2 is from 13 to 20. And after this commitment period, like in the Kyoto Protocol, it had been mentioned to reduce the emission by the developed nation who are responsible for the global warming, and if they are not able to do, then they can buy the carbon credits from the nations like India. And one carbon credit means 1 ton CO2 emission reduction from the atmosphere, and if we do reduce the 7 type of greenhouse gases, maybe carbon dioxide, methane, N2, HFC, PFC, SF6, and NF3, then all those projects are able to get their registration with United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change under the Kyoto Protocol. So now, as you know, the Paris Agreement had been triggered from 1 January 2021, and which had been adopted during November 2016. Still, you know, the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement is under the negotiation stage, and so yes, Article 6 is under the negotiation stage, and maybe we are expecting like during November 2021, during the meeting at Glasgow at United Kingdom, the Article 6, which outlines majorly about the Article 6.2, that means the cooperative approaches, and Article 6.4 about the international program similar to CDM. So this is somewhat the basics that I wish to have been covered in my presentation. For the people who are looking to come into this business, or the people who are looking for the employment opportunities into the carbon market supply chain stakeholders. So these are this is the supply chain that we do have into our carbon markets, starting from equipment manufacturer to the seller of credit, who is the project owner also, then project developer, third-party inspection companies are there, then DNA, the operating agencies are there, standards are there, traders, seller and aggregator, buyer of credits, NGOs, registry operators. Exchanges are also available in the international carbon markets. Then investors are there who pump money to get the ROI. The news media, multilateral organizations are also there. So coming to the last slide is related to the productivity challenges related to the sector that we do feel here in India is the lack of focus about the establishment of the voluntary or the compliance market, because as you see in the European Union or Korea or South Africa, China, Australia, there are some sort of voluntary or compliance market is there, and so the organizations, the manufacturing or service organizations or the government organizations are able to understand about what is the issue related to global warming, how are they prepared to reduce the emissions, and how the government is going to support the same through either voluntary carbon market or compliance carbon market. So this is the first problem that we do see into the environmental services within India. The second one is the low focus of MOFCC to tap international funds like GCF, JCM schemes, JCM scheme from Japan, then funds or grants maybe from the World Bank or ADB, because lots and lots of opportunities are there, and we find there is a very less focus from the ministry to tap such international funds. to tap such international funds. The third problem that we see is related to the financial, that is the issues related to the duty scrips benefit for the selling of the carbon credits. For example, if you do export carbon credits to the international carbon market, so the benefit related to SEIS or MEIS, it has not been covered to gain benefit of duty script. Then the second problem is the reverse charges. Reverse charge GST payment for the issuance of carbon credit is the next problem that we do see. Then no clear RBI inward or outward remittance codes are there. So sometimes bank officials who are the representatives of the RBI for inward outward remittances. We find someone used to tell about it should be considered as a commodity. Someone used to tell about it should be considered as services, and so we face a high difficulty to do such kind of transactions. Then income tax clarity is also not there, like how the income from the sale of carbon credits should be considered for the project owner, for the traders, and the consent to operate. There is not much clarity from the Ministry of Finance or Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change related to either we need to have such kind of consent to operate licenses or some permissions to be taken from the state government or the central government to trade such kind of credits. And the last, since many of the people who are into this industry of CDM, maybe called as, then there were high quality manpower available into the advisory and audit services, but due to lack of the environment, the business or employment opportunities, the people had moved out of the industry, but still there is a lot of requirement is there into the international carbon markets, and people can get employed or do business for the same. So the awareness programs, if the ministry will do take and will do support, do handholding services for the businesses into this sector, will definitely help us to flourish into the international carbon markets. So that was the last slide of mine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dabkara. I think your slides were not visible, so I hope you can share your presentation later for everyone. But anyhow, we heard you, and you made some very good points. This is a very niche market, of course. So now I think we've heard all the speakers, and the key questions that we wanted to ask and we wanted answered in this session from the speakers is around quality, around productivity, and around export potential. And I think most speakers have already highlighted these perspectives, and also the challenges that they are facing, what kind of opportunities they see. And I think everybody's come forward and really highlighted key points which will help to enhance the environmental services market in India and also make it competitive from an export point of view. One question that I would quickly like to ask the panelists is, what do you see as the role of partnerships for domestic and international partnerships that you think this market or the service providers in this market can leverage, and what role will partnerships play? So just really literally like 10-second answers from each of the panelists on this particular question before I take a couple of questions from the questions sent by the participants. So, Mr. R.K. Gupta, what do you think? How should partnerships be leveraged? Very quickly. You have to unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself. Yes.
I did it twice.
Sorry?
So the partnership could be of two types, One is a partnership with the government, and that is typically PPP. In PPP, I would say the pre-qualification conditions are little bit strict when the spectrum that I see in India. Typically, a contracting company or a knowledge company would not have so much money to invest to create a big project, whereas there are financiers or private equities available, who are willing to put in their money based on the technical competence of a particular party. So I would say here government must try to relax the pre-qualification conditions so that the people with deep pockets like private equities or developers, they can develop the project based on the technical competency of the contractors, and contractors essentially do not participate in the equity of that particular project. So this is something that I would like to say.
I think very, very interesting answer. And often we have also heard from various ministries and ULB that they don't get enough private sector bidding for the contracts that are tendered, and this is one of the reasons that the pre-qualification criteria might be too stringent. Okay, Mr. S.K. Gupta, would you like to say anything on this? Or Mr.
Well, I would say that we should be open to any technology from anywhere. We should accept technology with both open arms, but we should say absolutely no to manufacturing of equipment based on those technology or import of those equipment from abroad. We should develop our own competence in manufacturing sector here, and we should develop our own services to support them. That's all.
Thank you. That's again supporting the Atmanirbhar Bharat vision.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Kansal, would you like to talk about partnerships quickly? You have to unmute yourself. Mr. Kansal, unmute yourself.
I completely agree with Mr. Gupta, and also this whole idea of Atmanirbhar Bharat and that we need to develop things in our own country. We may learn from abroad, and we may develop partnerships from there. But we should finally look at growth of these things in our country, and make our country more self reliance on these matters, actually, and that is most important. Actually, we cannot continue to be dependent on foreign countries for these technologies, etc.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Chatterjee, Dr. Sandeep Chatterjee.
Actually, if you see the technology, country like India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, we require a different type of strategy. We require a low process cost and affordable technology. And in our country, huge facility may not work. So hand-holding the foreign company with the technology indigenously developed and can mass scale produce the machine, which is typically processing 100 kg or maximum 1000 kg in a different pockets of the country where we have a hotspot of generating electronic waste. That would be the right approach, and in the technology front. Of course, in skilling front, we is a vast country, so we require to handhold whatever we require a cost-effective model to like whatever we have done in a Greenie program. We have a content standard content in our website, so anybody can download that and do it the handholding which is nominal cost. The Greenie champions can be utilized for this job and do a cost-effective model, because country is huge. So they are also hand-holding from UNEP or this type of organization to further strengthening this move, and that will be suitable for African country or neighboring countries like Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. So that type of hand-holding will be important, and we require actually what I foresee in the country. We require a simple machine of like atta chakki, where the informal can purchase that machine, should not bother about the environment pollution, and can process the material. And once you can have a process the material of after let us take a copper bar, so there is those material can be sold to the copper smelter like Starlight, Hindustan Copper. So they should not go to the precious metal recycling. So that is not required. So from board to black copper, that can be converted into the small pockets like that. So that is my one suggestion.
Thank you, Dr. Chatterjee. Anyone else, Mr. Tachikawa? Would you like to answer this question on partnerships?
Yes, obviously, from the Japan or international perspectives, India is a very, very important market, especially for Japan. And, for the partnership, when, it comes to government to the private entity or, as an expert, it is a little bit difficult for us to, fully engage, like just from a scratch, from our side only. So we definitely need some local partners, so that we can transfer knowledge and experience and technologies to the Indians, because all of the government structures, tender systems, which is not really something that we can just access directly to. So definitely local interaction is quite important.
But Mr. Tachikawa, I just want to ask you a related question. Please. One is you partnering for the Indian market, but do you also envisage the other way around, like partnerships that Indian companies can offer for Japan or other countries in that region?
Yes, definitely that can happen. Yes, thank you very much. That's a great questions. And especially for like these carbon market related activities like energy procurement, and these things that's actually for us is especially for the Japanese companies who are active in Indian market, there is a very huge needs for them to actually purchase or transfer their activities into the renewable style. So in that respect, we definitely need to depend on the local companies, yes, so that we can have Japanese companies from a headquarters side to push their activities from top down to the local. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. Okay. So I think if there's any other speaker who would like to answer this question, most welcome. Otherwise, I'll just like to move on to a couple of questions. We don't have much time before we wrap up the session. One of the questions, and this is, most of you have spoken about it in terms of, I think this question has been answered on, these are some questions I'm reading out which participants have sent. How is brand India perceived in this sector globally? I think a couple of speakers have already highlighted this. What kind of support is expected from the government? If some speaker wants to say anything, I know a lot has been said around that as well in terms of training, handholding, etc. But is there anything specific that you think the government can do to widen this market for environmental services, not only for existing companies, but also to allow more companies to mushroom in this sector, because we see a lack of companies in this sector. And environmental services is such a wide spectrum of services. So, open to any speaker. Mr. Gupta, Mr. S.K. Gupta, yes. Please unmute yourself.
I think this sector has been made very wide open because, as I said in my opening statement, that environment touches all aspects of our life and it is embedded to our ecosystem. And I think the entire area is open and there's a need for private players to develop their competencies and start delivering and becoming accountable for whatever they are delivering. Unless that happens, this growth will not take place and it will remain limited to
how can companies like yours help in creating more such companies, bring more entrepreneurs in this space? Any of the speakers can answer this question. Thank you, Mr. Gupta. I got your point. But anybody else?
Yeah, sorry. Can I add a couple of comments? Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that there was discussions about the tenders, the discussions, about the Indians. in case of Japan, for the those environmental projects, of course, the large size companies, and there is a very stringent actually criteria. There used to be. And now, actually, somehow like a Ministry of the Environment and other, the governmental organization change their criteria and just try to accept actually those like, not the startups, but at least like, those like, the small companies who have a very solid or in-depth technologies, just to take a part of this bidding process. So that at least, they can see some activities along with the government policy can be potential opportunities for those startups take a bid. So they set up those like new criteria that is talking, and there is a possibility for those small companies, to join. Yeah. So that's one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting point. And I think one of the speakers also mentioned this, that often, these kind of companies do not have the scale of expertise that the pre-qualification demand usually. Yes, thank you. Yes. So I think we're really short of time, and I won't dare to summarize this entire session, which has been very, very interesting. But a long list of insights and points and recommendations really have come forward in this session. And I really want to thank the speakers for highlighting different perspectives and for everyone to stay within their time limits. But I think the key points that come forward really are that quality is paramount, that companies need to look at certification of manpower and of building their competence, but importantly that we also have to look at equivalence of Indian standards in global markets. I think this is something that we see across in many areas where we do not have mutual recognition of standards, and that is very, very critical for India to drive in mutual recognition of standards, so that our standards are recognized in other markets and our companies do not have to again acquire different standards. And same thing applies to the equivalence of our skill sets. So our skilled manpower, when they go to other countries, do not have to again acquire newer skills to fit in. So how can we drive equivalence of standards and equivalence of skilled manpower in global markets? I think that's a very, very important point. The other point is, looking at a circular economy approach rather than a linear approach will be very, very important in looking at absolutely from a cradle to grave approach, really. And by doing so, I think there are different kinds of things that need to be addressed. There are, of course, challenges. There's also a large section of informal sector that is engaged. So we need more of authorized recyclers to come in. We need technologies across this entire value chain when we look at design to end of life completely, and that will also trigger demand for various services if we look at a much more circular economy approach than a linear approach. And of course, accountability is another thing I think the speakers have alluded to, that the more accountability is factored in, then it leads to companies taking into account the negative, the cost of the negative product and minimizing the cost. That again will help, will be enabled through various environmental services. And for global market, I think we've come across various points in terms of the kinds of partnerships, the kind of training, skilling, training also for different languages, etc., that the manpower would need. So there are various kinds of points that have come forward today in terms of also lab support that is needed, awareness building that is needed, and awareness building not just for the corporate sector, but the employees, the awareness for the masses will of course trigger the demand for environmental services even further. So I think, and interestingly, because ESG is becoming more and more important for corporates and including financial institutions, given the spate of natural disasters or other climate-related disasters that one has seen in recent years, I think the consciousness around factoring in ESG parameters and looking at risk mitigation strategy has become also very, very important. So I will, I think, end here by saying that it has been a very, very insightful session and interesting to see the kind of environmental services that are on offer within India and the potential that this sector really has, tremendous potential within India as well as in the global markets. So with that, I will hand it over back to the organizers. Thank you very much.
On behalf of QCI, I would like to thank Ms. Rita Roy Chaudhary for moderating this session and briefing the session so well. I would also like to thank all the esteemed speakers and panelists for sharing their useful insights and perspectives towards the environmental services sector. All the inputs and recommendations shared today will greatly contribute towards the preparation of the compendium that will be released after the conclusion of the webinar series. We are grateful to all the participants for being part of today's enriching session. I now we can end the meeting now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
Thank you very
everybody.
much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.